Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ready, Set, Midmarket. Also happens to be Samara and I's final episode of 2025. So very successful year in our podcast launch. I'm Adam Dennison, Vice President, Midsize Enterprise Services with the Channel Company. And joining me, as always, is Editorial Director of MES Computing, Samara Lynn. And we have two fabulous guests today to talk about a very interesting topic, AI governance. Might not be the coolest thing to talk about when it comes to AI, but it certainly is crucial to the success of your business and your use of AI. I'd like to welcome Jay Ferro. He's the Chief Information, Technology, and Product Officer with Clario.
Hey, Adam. Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Blaine Carter. He is a global CIO with Franklin.
Thanks, Adam. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And incidentally, both of these gentlemen sit on Samara and I's MES advisory board as well. So they do an awful lot for us, and we appreciate everything that you two bring to the table. Before we get started, why don't you just introduce yourselves a little bit more? Let us know what Clario is. I think a lot of us have heard of Franklin but might not know the Franklin of today. So Jay, why don't you just start, kind of let us know a little bit more about Clario, your role, and then we'll go to you, Blaine, and then we'll dig into the topic.
Sure thing. Thanks, Adam. Clario is a clinical trial technology company. So we do endpoint data collection. Whenever you are in a clinical trial, generally speaking, you are trying to make sure that the therapeutic, the drug, the molecule, whatever, is safe, of course, and effective and improves lives. Our technology helps large pharmaceutical organizations, biotechs, et cetera, collect the data that they need, analyze and interpret the data to accelerate both the trial process, but also accelerate decision-making. So all the technology that goes into collecting all of that data, whether it's respiratory, cardiac, medical imaging, behavioral data, et cetera, requires a whole bunch of technology in countries all around the world. We build, also augmented with science and AI, we build all of that technology and deploy it all around.
Perfect. Thank you. Blaine?
Yeah. So if you have heard of FranklynCovey, most of you might have know FranklynCovey as the planner people. Obviously, we were known for that back in the 90s. I see Jay smiling. Maybe it was his first job. He sat down in the room and there was someone that had that planner there. FranklynCovey has actually evolved from that, where we no longer do the planner business, but we do carry those same principles around leadership, trust, and time management into more of a training and business services type of a model. And so our primary revenue source right now is actually an online platform that delivers a lot of our systems around the world. We sell in about 160 countries globally and have been doing that since about 2017. And we're excited for the AI revolution, as it were, to hopefully help improve people's lives, both from a training standpoint as well as from a everyday standpoint, and we can hopefully all avoid the AI overlords eventually.
Yeah, so it's not your father's Franklin anymore.
It's not. We do a lot of the principles we find are timeless, but the delivery mechanisms have definitely changed over the years.
Yep, absolutely.
Those planners were worth their weight in gold, Blaine. Let me tell you something.
I hear you, man. And so we still have people come to me. I have family members that come to me and say, "Hey, can I still get a discount on that planner?" And it's like, that's going to be real tough for me. Get a time machine, maybe we could.
A production of one is not that.
I'm a guy that loves office supplies and all of that. I know that dates me, but whenever you get like a fresh notebook or a fresh FranklynCovey planner, man, it is the whole world is a possibility. When you have this blank thing, you're like, oh, I'm going to be unstoppable now.
You are unstoppable, Jay. You keep that.
I have 1 page left in my notebook for the year.
Adam knows. Adam knows.
I have to book a couple more meetings early next week.
Right.
All right. So let's jump into the topic. Look, AI governance is something that many end users probably don't think about. I'm an end user. I don't think about it very often. Some may not care about it. How would you define AI governance and what its importance is to your organization? I'll just throw that question out to both of you to chat through.
I'll let Blaine. I'm happy to go first. So I think AI governance is naturally an extension of data governance. In my mind, those kind of things go hand in hand and are one kind of leads to the other. If you and your organization didn't have a great data governance program, chances are AI governance is going to be a very difficult task, because really AI is basically just making data accessible in a way that's much more humanly consumable. And so if you're maybe a little behind on the data governance side, I think that's probably a natural starting point. But I think there's also a few other key points I think you have to discuss that is around any kind of risk-based system, which I think AI is really at the base level a risk-based system. Is what industry are you in? Jay is obviously in healthcare. There's going to be a much higher lift on HIPAA healthcare information in there. But it goes into how do you make sure that you're governing AI in the same way you would with any other business system? Are you doing risk assessments? Do you have clear principles or clear policies around AI usage? What compliance do you have to be part of? And then how are you taking that and developing a training and awareness program for your team and for those in your company that it enables them to do things with AI if it's relevant without putting the business at risk? And so I think those are kind of some of the big systems there that kind of touch on a governance program there is how do you do that? Not only, it's at a small, maybe pilot group, but how do you do that at scale? And that's where I think the industry is really changing rapidly. With AI, if week in and week out, there's something new, a new model here, a new risk there. And so I think there's, bundled around that whole thing is like a monitoring and, an improvement cycle that has to be kind of built into your governance. And so I'll stop there and kind of let Jay fill in some details because I know he probably has some experience with this as well.
And Jay, give us
I
that
think
healthcare spin on it.
go
too.
ahead.
Give us that healthcare spin too, from your perspective.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and you nailed it. In the life sciences space in particular, there's, we are very highly regulated, rightly so. I think the integrity of the clinical trial process and drug discovery, people expect it, right? I think appropriately, that there are controls, including in the use of AI. I think I'd start, and Blaine, you did a really nice job kind of framing it. What AI governance is not just an ethics committee. It is not a legal document that sits on a shelf. It's not about banning AI. Believe it or not, I still hear that every single day from old school CIOs who talk about banning it. Oh, I don't know what it is, so therefore I'm going to ban it. And it is not an IT only responsibility. It's an organizational lift. The way that we've approached it really is in 6 core buckets, in my view. I'm sure my general counsel and my chief quality officer and chief medical officer would add quite a bit here, but what is AI allowed to do? Which use cases are approved? What is restricted versus prohibited? What human review? We keep humans in the loop whenever it comes to a clinical trial, so that there is human oversight as part of that process. Number 2, what data can AI access? Blaine, you touched on it. It can't just be a free-for-all. What are allowed? PHI, PII, proprietary, public? Is it encrypted? Is it pseudonymized? Is it anonymized? What data can be used to train models, et cetera? Number 3, who's accountable? Who owns the use case? Who signs off? In our case, a lot of people sign off before anything goes to production, whether it's me, my CISO, my chief medical officer, my head of quality, data science, certainly our partner general counsel, Laura Mishtal, who's amazing and has really helped bring a lot of this stuff to life. Number 4, how risk is managed, and Blaine touched on that, so I won't belabor it, but it is about risk management. How do you check all of this? How is AI audited and explained? We have to explain our models. Can the outputs be traced back to the inputs? We can't just throw a model in production and go, trust us, it's in there. I mean, you got to go back and audit and explain the quality of code and the model. So it needs to be explained to customers, regulators, potentially courts. Are things logged and reviewed? And then lastly, and I think this one gets a lot of oversight, how are your vendors or your partners and other third parties utilizing AI? Is it embedded in purchase tools? Are you overlooking that? How do they handle your data? We are held accountable in many ways to our third-party partnerships. So if a customer comes to us, there's an expectation that we're managing that as well. So I would say this all sounds like heavy lifting and like a lot of red tape. I promise to all of the listeners out there, if you set up these guardrails right at the beginning or toward the beginning, it will make your life so much easier. And what we have found is that it actually speeds things up. It speeds up innovation because there's a sense of partnership throughout our organization and certainly with our customers that we're doing AI correctly.
So that was going to be kind of my follow-up question. It does sound like a heavy lift. And again, I'm an end user, right? I'm not an IT leader.
Yeah.
Are you able to position it as we do this and we can be more innovative rather than just the risk mitigation aspect of it, which some people might be like, you know what, Jay, we'll get to that. I want to do the cool stuff.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. When I joined in 20 2020, we had a handful of models in production. We got an early start in AI. Back in 2018, we had our first scientifically validated algorithm, and then we've expedited it since then. We tend not to look at model count much anymore. We look at more at impact beyond just, hey, we have 140 scientifically validated models in production. That's nice. It shows growth, but I'm more interested in impact. The reason we can do that and the reason we've had such explosive growth is because we did it the right way and because we've brought everybody along with us. It wasn't Jay with a wild IT idea going, trust me, it's going to be great, and I'll throw it to you once a quarter and you'll review it. Was forging partnerships with our general counsel, our chief medical officer, science, regulatory, quality, and my CISO. And at the beginning, it requires a little bit of upfront work. But once everybody gets comfortable and has a how we can, not why we can't mindset, it speeds it up, Adam. It absolutely, you pay a little bit of a toll at the beginning, but you more than make up for it along the way.
Blaine, what about your side? How you position these types of discussions with your business partners?
I'm going to build on something that Jay mentioned there. He says you pay a little toll. I would like to maybe rephrase that as you put a deposit down on a further payout that you get in the future. And I think this is
I like
one of
that
those
better.
places where
That's better.
You have to put in a deposit, right? We actually teach a course around what we call the speed of trust, and I think AI's trust has historically been very low. People say, how many R's are in strawberry, or how many states in the United States have the letter R, and it hallucinates and it tries to be helpful, but historically, especially at an enterprise level, that trust level for AI in general has a lot to be desired. But it doesn't mean it's something you can ignore. What Jay was saying there, where you have to make that deposit up front, I think that goes a long way with stakeholders to say, you know what, we're not going to put our head in the sand. We're not going to ban AI. What we want to do, though, is we want to build a trusting relationship with our business units and legal compliance to make sure that we're all on the same, path together. I think, as we talked about this, I think that's one of the highlights to look for in your company is that as a CIO, they can't bring in a Gartner or a consultant and they can tell you everything about the industry, but the role of that CIO is to understand both the business and the technology. And that's where you can't have, a consultant totally replace that IT leaders, because you're the one that really does sit in the right at the crest of that wave of making sure that you have understanding of both sides. And that way you can have that trusted relationship with both the business and keeping abreast of all the compliance and things like that. It's not an easy job, but it's your job. And if it were easy, then everyone would do it. And so that's, I think, where we can provide a lot of value as IT leaders, is to be able to surf that wave, keep that trust going, and help everyone see the vision of where we can, as a company, use AI to better, again, in Jay's words, to have that impact. Because I think that's really where AI shines, is where it's able to have an impact on something, whether it's your business internally or whether it's with your customers.
Yeah, otherwise, why are you doing it, right? Otherwise, it's a weird science project that
it's the 90%
only guys like you and I
MIT is
care
just
about.
spending money on. I get it. Yeah.
I have another follow-up question, then I want Samara to jump in with her questions. What sort of processes do you have in place for monitoring AI models and usage? Do you have tools in place to do this? Is it more manual? I know, Jay, you said it a little bit ago that there's some manual pieces here where everyone takes a look at something, as it's being rolled out or used. What's that balance look like between tech and manual oversight?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. We regularly guard against hallucination, bias, those types of things. A lot of our models tend to be closed at some point, so that you don't want to continually refine a model throughout the clinical trial process naturally as you're collecting data over time. So you tend to close the model so that it's consistent, at least through that particular, which is super helpful. But we have an army of data folks, data scientists, domain experts that help us along with this. And so it's a combination of both, Adam.
I can state from my perspective. Obviously, we're dealing with what we call important information, but it's not clinical data, this healthcare information. And so we, as a company, we evaluate our risk versus, how quickly we want to move on things. And so for FranklynCovey, we are, taking these models and we're doing what we call grounded. I think it's a basic AI term that is starting to take a lot of hold, is making sure you ground your models in relevant data so that you keep them from having to rely on inference and, even worse yet, web searches to be able to fill that in. And so for us, it's making sure that the model you're using is very much aligned with the use case you want. And so for a lot of people, if you're looking for, as an example, a general knowledge bot where you're like, I need to be able to ask a multitude of questions and get a wide variety of answers back, you're necessarily going to have a risk there because you're having it be such a wide based model where it starts to become very narrowly focused. And what I find truly valuable is when, like Jay was saying, where you're really able to narrow that model down to perform a specific action. And to doing that, you get a much deeper level of understanding from that AI model. And so we want to make sure that we're balancing out the use cases with the value that they're able to provide. And that in a way, you can do a lot of automation, but at this point, it's such a young market. I feel like AI is still such an emerging market that you're going to have to get some very smart people and have them, perform a lot of those things manually, because I haven't and maybe there is one out there and I'm just, limiting myself into the knowledge I have, but I haven't seen a reliable and consistent way of evaluating those completely through technology.
And it really varies on the type of model that it is. I mean, you have always on monitoring, you have input output validation with kind of guardrails in production. Certainly with us, when it comes to the clinical trial models, we have a human in the loop review, which is consistent. Now, that doesn't apply to things like that are operational. Hey, we're doing document analysis for internal or reviewing contracts, that kind of thing. Yeah, you have human oversight, but you're not really touching a clinical trial process. So there's slightly less regulatory hurdles or burden when it comes to things like that. And then you have periodic revalidation and recertification of those models, which, we've defined, depending on the model, a regular cadence, sometimes quarterly, sometimes monthly, sometimes event-based based on a new data source, whatever, where you're saying, okay, every quarter we're going to revalidate and recertify the model. It's going to include bias, fairness checks, performance comparison versus baseline, that type of thing. So it really depends on, and I think Blaine said it, the use case, the type of model that it is, and the regulatory burden that you have on that particular model.
Thank you. Samara, I want to get you into the discussion here.
Yeah, sure. Jay, I can relate to you. Back in the early 2000s, I was an IT director at a healthcare organization. And I remember the administrator handed me this binder of HIPAA regulations. And I was completely overwhelmed. I'm like, I have no idea what to do here. I know you and Blaine are in two very different verticals, but what 3 steps would you say a mid-market leader who does not have the experience in governance or regulations, what can they take now to start their journey on AI governance?
Oh gosh. I think to get started, don't worry about boiling the ocean right out of the gate. Acknowledge reality. I think you have to assume, if you're just getting started, that your employees are using ChatGPT and Copilot, embedded AI and tools every single day. I think identifying owners within the organization and finding allies. So if you're the CIO or you're the VP, you're the head of IT, the CTO, the CDO, whatever, or you're in his or her organization, assign a clear owner and find some counterparts within the organization. So with us, I'd say 4 years ago when I got started, it was the general counsel. It was our chief medical officer. So it was Lauren Mishal, Todd Rudeau, our head of quality, a guy named Todd Kisner, and a number of others, Mortazan Nassar, our CISO. And we have flexed since then based on domain knowledge that we've needed. And of course, now our chief AI officer, Marko Topalovic, who really is kind of the day-to-day point person on quite a bit of this. So get started somewhere and don't sacrifice good for the sake of perfection rather. The last step, and then you're going to get into, because I know the next thing that somebody's going to tell me is, well, you got to get into data classification and all that stuff. That's fine. I think a rudimentary AI use policy, what is what is approved, what is restricted, what is prohibited, let employees know that you're working on it and continue to refine it. I think if you get started, it picks up speed pretty quickly. Ironically, it's not the technology that is the heavy lift right out of the gate. It tends to be just getting started and putting some sort of guardrails around things. And then it picks up speed, I think, pretty quickly.
What
Blaine,
about
any
you?
suggestions you'd have for someone to get?
I like a lot of Jay's suggestions. I would align with a lot of those. One of the things we did very early on is set up basically 2 what we call steering committees. One is from a compliance, regulatory, legal, how do we wrap our arms around the risk of AI? And number 2 is a little bit more of a broader committee, and that's around what use cases make a lot of sense for your particular company. And a lot of times you would think that the executive team and the high level leadership are the ones that can really direct that. But what we found is that a lot of our best use cases were derived from people who feel the pain day to day. It's those individual contributors, those frontline managers are the ones that have had a lot of the great ideas, because they're the ones in the trenches day in and day out. They're the ones that really would say, you know what, I use ChatGPT to write my mom a birthday card. I can see a little bit of what it can do with just that limited knowledge. They can see applicability in their organization. And so, being able to help operations wise is helping with those committees. And then obviously that one of those steps is to, where is the risk appetite for your company? Are you a startup where you're able to take a lot of risks, you're able to fail a lot, that's acceptable in your culture? Or are you highly regulated where you have to really, really think before you leap in a lot of cases? And then it does kind of change the way you model that. And so I would make sure that you're matching up your company's culture and infrastructure and resources with the pace at which you can do AI. I think I've seen a lot of failed AI products, not because, the AI failed or something else. It's that the use case was not clearly defined up front. And so people said, oh, we're going to solve, 80% of our operational problems with AI. And that was as deep as it got into the definition portion. And it never is able to, compete with that. Those are really some of the steps I would make sure you're taking, is really, really dig into your use cases and really make sure this is a team sport. This is not, as an IT leader, this is not yours to carry alone. In fact, it should never be yours to carry alone. You really should have a team that can help you succeed and get across the finish line there.
I love it. I mean, I think, and once you have all of this in place, classifying your AI use cases by risk, and Blaine nailed it perfectly. But you don't even have to get into like some sort of arcane 80-page manual right out of the gate. Start with simple tiering: low, medium, high risk. Samara, you talked about my industry. I mean, we know what we can't do, right? So it's very clear, and what we can do is very highly watched. And so with us just getting started with, okay, we can't use that. We don't want to touch that. So what can we do? And then getting into locking down appropriate data so that it cannot be used, or inappropriate data so that it cannot be used with model development or AI, and all of those things. I sat with a CIO of a mid-market organization not too long ago, and we were at a roundtable. This was maybe 9 months ago. So it wasn't like it was the beginning of the AI revolution. And we're all going around kind of where we are. And they said, gosh, we've spent, 9 or 10 months just kind of developing our reasonable use policy. And I'm like, I see Blaine's reaction was mine in the room. I was like, you got to be. The irony is you could have had ChatGPT create one for you in like 30 seconds. How in the heck are you taking 9 months to just create one? I mean, have it 80% correct and tweak it weekly if you need to, but start. And I think, Samara, going back to your comment about being in IT, I think one of the things that works against us is we are very binary at times. I mean, it either is or it isn't. It's a 1 or a 0. It's either perfect or it's not. And we've got to be okay with navigating a little bit in the gray and then pivoting quickly.
So a few minutes left. You two are way further along than much of our audience. I think that's apparent. You've got your good guide rails set up, but there's still employees at your organization. Do you have any interesting, mishaps that have happened, things like that? How often do you have to say, hey, get back within these guide rails? How often is that popping up?
Jay, I'm sure you have the stories from that as well. I will give one small story that it's interesting. We were developing a model for our coach. It's a coaching platform we were doing. And we were going through and we had grounded it in all of FranklynCovey's intellectual property, and we had added all this information in there. And we're like, hey, this coach is doing really well at running through scenarios with people and giving him guidelines and things like that. And then we were basically a week from going live with the coach, and someone on the team said, you know what, let's just do one more review on there. And they went back in and they said, let's look at this model one more time. And they realized that the model they were ready to go into production with was not the model that was grounded in any of the stuff. All the work had been done. One developer had changed one thing, and we were ready to go live with a model that was going to have wildly awful results. It was like, all of the awful things you hear about AI, we were like one button click away from going live with that model rather than the one that had all the compliance work done. And so sometimes it's the little things that you know, that catch you up on there. And it's,
Yep.
and you know, even though you have all the structure in the world and you have all the, you know, regulatory compliance, everyone had signed off on it. Sometimes it's that little thing that catches you that you weren't expecting. And so that
That
would be
person
one
get
story that we've had happen.
a raise and a promotion.
Yeah, cool. Clearly. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
There was a lot of back patting there on that one.
Yeah.
Luckily, we haven't had anything catastrophic. We've have had the usual, the people who bring financial models that they ran through Copilot or something like that, where it made errors and or had it rewrite something that was awful. Luckily, nothing customer facing or anything like that. But you're like, that can't be right. And they're like, oh, well, I ran it by Copilot. And you're like, dude, what are you doing, man? You got to double check your work.
Right again. Yeah, we heard an interesting one from one of our MES members who happens to work in the legal field, and an attorney wrote an opinion via Chat GPT.
Oh boy,
And it got
my word.
that didn't go over too well.
No. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing.
That's got to be in the original policy somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Hall of Fame bad. Yeah, that's bad.
So, all three of you, any parting comments before we close? This has been great. And again, I think you two are much further along. We'll see you at our events, and I'll tell people that aren't that far along to seek you out.
Please do.
MES.
Hey, listen, we all got to stick
talk 'em.
together in our space. I know Blaine and I are really shy guys, so we are really hard to get to open up. But no, please, have them seek us out. Would love to share war stories and help in any way.
Absolutely. I think Jay's right on that. I think also what Jay said, like, don't let perfection be what's stopping you from getting started. I think this is we're all trying to be in this together. Like, I think Jay and I would be very open to sharing what's worked, what hasn't worked. There's no secrets here. We're trying to gatekeep or anything like that. I think we could all win on this together.
I agree.
Even Mike from Gartner in our one of our sessions said, talking about the data getting ready for AI, he's like, it's not going to be exactly perfect. Like, get it to where you're comfortable and get started. So you're not the person, Jay, I'm 10 months and I haven't even written a simple policy here.
My word.
Yeah. Talk about being behind.
Yeah.
But Jay, Blaine, thank you so much. Samara and I really appreciate you joining us again for our final Ready, Set, Mid-Market for the year. And we will absolutely see you in the new year. And thank you so much for your insights here.
Thank you all.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
That's a
Happy
big
holidays.
win for you guys. A good year ahead, and congratulations on the year so far.
Yeah,
Thank
congratulations. You. Well said, Blaine. Great to see everybody. Happy holidays out there, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.